I'm also recording this on my phone, by the way. If I were to pull out that dairy thermometer, the temperature right now of this icy water, let's give it a good stir to make sure that the temperature is even around the entire thing. The temperature is just a tad above 0 degrees Celsius. It's pretty close to 33 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's pretty close to 33 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's see if my little thermometer, my little infrared thermometer, would say the same thing. So it's hovering right on top of an ice cube right now, so it's closer to 29 degrees. And then what I have over here, and I'll just pick it up and show it to you, is a hot plate. So I actually just bought this on Amazon today. I thought this would be kind of cool to show, to use. Safety, if you do this at home, this surface is going to get really, really hot. So be really, really careful. All right? If you burn yourself, don't sue me. Okay? All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this hot plate, and I'm going to turn it on to max. Let me turn it on. I'm going to turn it all the way up to max. And I'm going to take my ice water. I'm going to put it on the hot plate. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to boil ice water. And what I'm actually going to do during this time is I'm going to monitor how the temperature changes as the ice water boils. So I've got my little thermometer here. And it's going to sink to the bottom, unfortunately, so it might get artificially high right now. So I'm also going to have my little infrared thermometer up here. And what I'm going to do is roughly every minute, I'm actually going to measure the temperature of the water. I'm going to measure the temperature, measure how it changes. All right, so let's do it. So 1 minute in, and the temperature of my ice water, if I give it a good stir, the temperature of my ice water is still right around, if you actually take a look, it's right around 33 degrees, 32, 33 degrees. All right, so let's give it a minute. I'm actually going to pull this thing out because I don't want it to touch the bottom and burn and break. But every minute I'll put it back in. Let's see what my infrared thermometer is showing. So it's still hovering right around 32 degrees. Hovering right around 32 degrees. Rising a little bit. I think it's touching one of those hot patches. So the water's definitely starting to heat up. Okay, so it's been a minute. Let's give it another twirl. What I'm going to do is every time I take a reading, I'm going to give it a twirl and then zoom in on the thermometer. Okay, and so right now the temperature is about, let's see here, it's a little below 40. Actually, it's a little, so it's a little below 40. It looks like it's 36. It's actually dropping a little bit. That's because there's still ice in the water. So there's still ice in the water. Okay, so let's give it a few seconds. And then we'll do it again. Okay, so it's been a minute. Let's give it a stir. So I actually have, just to show you what I'm doing, I actually have a little timer at the top of my recording on my iPhone. So let's give it a stir. And basically what I'm doing is once the timer hits 6 minutes, I gave it a stir, and then at 30 seconds, I'm actually going to read the temperature. Okay. And what we have, it's a little hard to see, but we're still right around 36 degrees. A little below 36 degrees. All right. Don't mind the messiness of my desk, by the way. I've been living off of this thing essentially for the last 3 months due to the COVID-19 pandemic. All right, now we're at 7 minutes. Let's give it another stir. So that mixes all the water around. And then let's take a look again. Okay, so now we're at 7 minutes. And giving it a stir. We still have a temperature in that mid to upper 30s. I'm taking a look right now. Let me see if I can actually clear off this fogginess. Make the reading a little bit easier to find, a little bit easier to spot. There we go. Way better. So I still kind of got that 36. So the water temperature so far hasn't really warmed up much. All right, let's give it another stir. So the reason why I'm actually stirring the water is because if I didn't do that, we would have a situation where the bottom of the water, where the heat is, would be much warmer than the top of the water. So I'm trying to mix it all up together so it's the same temperature all the way throughout. Trying to make sure I don't mislead y'all. This isn't misleading 101, this is meteorology 10. Okay. And so now we have a temperature a little bit higher. So we're a little bit above 40 now. If you notice, the ice is rapidly going away. So all the ice is melting. But if you notice, as long as there's still ice, it kind of seems like that temperature isn't rising much. As long as there's still ice, that temperature isn't really rising much. All right, let's give it another stir. And another reading. Another stir and another reading. So now there's just a tiny bit of ice left. And if you notice, the temperature is starting to rise now. The temperature is starting to rise now. But it's not skyrocketing. But it is starting to rise. All right, let's give it another twirl. And so now our ice cubes are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So we've been going about this now for almost 10 minutes. See, so we've been going about this now for almost 10 minutes. 1 second, my screen shut off. Let me turn it back on. Okay, I'm still here. And really, the temperature has only gotten into the low 50s. So we've been doing this now. We've been putting this on now. Easily, well, maybe I wouldn't say 10 minutes, closer to 7 minutes. But the temperature really hasn't risen that much in that 7 minutes. Now all the ice is almost melted. Watch what happens now that all the ice is completely melted. Watch how fast the temperature rises. Let's watch how fast the temperature rises now. Now that all the ice is melted, we have a temperature that is rapidly increasing now. So at 66, 68, 70. So it took us about 10 minutes to warm the water up even 10 degrees. We have now seen the water temperature. In fact, now we are at 76. 78. 80. Yeah, we've seen the water temperature. Let me just switch hands here. Apologies for doing that. But yeah, what we're actually seeing is the water temperature is now rising much more rapidly. Still, in the interest of accuracy, give it a good spin. Okay, so now we are at 90. So, I mean, just think about this. 3 minutes ago, we had ice inside here, and the temperature had barely gotten into the 50s. Once that ice has melted, look what is happening. Look what is happening. Look at what is happening. Okay, so now we're at 100. So it took us about 12, 13, well, not 12, 13. It took us about 5 or 6 minutes to get the temperature from that 32-degree freezing level to the low 50s. And in just the past roughly 4 minutes, we've gone from the low 50s to well over 100 now. Now we're approaching 110. Now we're approaching 110. We're now at 120. Starting to see a little bit of bubbling at the bottom. So the water right near the bottom has heated up enough to where it's actually almost at the boiling point. Okay, 124. Okay, 130. I know, it seems like it's like watching paint dry. I mean, instead it's watching water boil. But okay, 140. Starting to hear some bubbling down near the bottom. That's because that temperature, or that water very closest to the hot plate is boiling. Thankfully, this is a Pyrex glass, so starting to see lots of moving around, lots of swirly motions. All that kind of stuff is happening. Okay, now we're at 150. Let's give it a good stir so that water from below mixes in with the water from above. Okay, so we're at 150, 152. $156. I'm still here. I'm recording this both on my screen on Camtasia and also on my phone. And what I will actually do is I'll transfer it all over and have it all on one little screen. Starting to hear that rolling boil now at the bottom. What happens though is as soon as I stir it, that water on the bottom that's on the verge of boiling mixes in with the not as warm water higher up. So we get that even temperature. As soon as I stop stirring, that water near the bottom starts to boil again. I mean, think about this. Just 10 minutes ago, the water temperature was in the low 50s. We're now at 172 degrees. Let's give it another stir. So how about the mountain lions? Go De Anza. So now we're at 180 degrees. What I'll also do is I'll actually go back and review this video, and I'll actually write the data down in a table as well, so that you can see what I recorded. Yeah, now the water near the bottom is pretty much full on boiling. My temperature is now 186, rapidly rising. Give it another good stir. By the way, if you do this at home, make sure that you have things that aren't going to like explode. A dairy thermometer is really good or a scientific grade glass thermometer is really good for your thermometer. You can get one of those either at a homebrew store or on Amazon, usually very, very cheap. If you use a beaker like what I'm using, I'd recommend using a Pyrex beaker. In fact, I'd say use a Pyrex beaker. Because Pyrex beakers don't break in this kind of heat. They're very sensitive to that. Or they're very not sensitive to that. They don't break. They don't blow up. We don't want that. Yeah, it's actually starting to happen pretty quickly now. Take a look at our water temperature. We're now rapidly hitting 200 degrees Fahrenheit. We're rapidly hitting 200 degrees Fahrenheit. This is we're getting very quickly into that boiling point. And if you take a look, we're starting to see a full rolling boil near the bottom. As soon as I stir it up, though, the boiling kind of stops. And that's just because there's some water that hasn't reached the boiling point yet. But, you know, so now we're at 202. The boiling point is 212. That's actually at the very top of this thermometer. That's up here. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting close. Now you can see a bunch of steam rising off. Okay, so we are at... So we're still at 202. If you notice, now the rate of warming is slowing down. I mean, we went from like 50 degrees to 202 degrees in about 10 minutes. But making that final push up to the boiling point of 212 is going to take a little bit longer. It's one of the reasons why this activity takes some time. Okay, so our water's boiling. Our water's essentially boiling at this point. The temperature of the water is about 204 right now. It's about 204. If you notice, that thermometer is not climbing as quickly. That water is vigorously boiling now. I can cook stuff in it if I wanted to. Okay, we are still at 204. Give it another minute. I'm still here at 204 right now. Maybe closer to 205. Still at just about 204. I think in the future what I need to do is actually get a little clamp to just kind of keep this thing locked into place, because my hand is very fidgety. But I mean, if you notice, the temperature's not really going up anymore. It's kind of staying at that like 204 temperature. The thermometer might be off a little bit as well. Give it a stir just to... Okay. So let's take a look here. Yeah, we're still at 204. Yeah, it's almost like the temperature is just frozen at 204. It just stopped going up. All right, let's see what my infrared thermometer says about the temperature of this water right now. So it's kind of hovering around that 209, 210, 211. 212 is the boiling point of water at sea level. Actually, a better way would probably be pointing at this so that I'm actually getting the temperature of the water itself and not the temperature of this horrifically hot plate. I mean, look how hot that thing is. Thing's 800 degrees. So let's just actually hover over the water itself. If you notice, the temperature isn't really going up much anymore. It's just kind of hovering there. Right around that 211, 212. Right around that 211, 212. That's actually the boiling point of water at sea level. One thing I should mention is I am actually about 200 feet above sea level where I'm located. So that means that the boiling point should be slightly less than 212. But honestly, it shouldn't be enough for it to be a big difference. Okay, so I think I've got some editing to do right now. But if you notice, like once the water began boiling, the temperature really didn't continue to increase. It sort of leveled off. Well, latent heat actually explains why when there was still ice in the water, the temperature didn't go up much. And then now that the water's boiling, the temperature didn't go up much either. What's actually happening here is any heat that's being added to our system, that beaker of ice water, is actually going into changing the phase of the water. Rather than increasing the temperature of the water, it's going into changing the phase of the water. So temperatures remain relatively steady. However, as soon as all of that ice melted, once all that ice was gone, the temperature went from just slightly fluctuating to very rapidly increasing. And now, just to do one final reading, I'll drop my thermometer in here one more time. Just to do one final reading. So, the last time I did a reading a few minutes ago, it was at 202. Let's see what it's at now. Okay, it's still rising because it's still acclimating to the heat of the water. But let's see here. I'll just keep an eye on it until it stops rising. Okay. $198. $200. So still right around 200. Actually, it's even slightly lower than it was when I first started reading the thermometer. I think that's because I took it out, though. But it hasn't increased any more than that. Okay, now it's closer to 202, but it hasn't really increased any more than what it was 5 minutes ago. All right. I think I'm going to call it an experiment. So I'm going to call it an experiment. This is something you can do at home. If you have a hot plate and a little pot, I would recommend, if you don't have a Pyrex beaker or a Pyrex measuring cup, use a pot, like a little pot that won't break. And then make sure that you have a thermometer that's capable of going up to these high temperatures so that it doesn't break as well. But other than that, Yeah, basically what happened was, while there was still ice in the water, and actually I'm going to turn this